Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I'm in one of my favorite spots in the entire world. I'm up in my favorite canyon, next to my favorite waterfall, and I am reviewing some knives while I'm up here. I've got a couple of knives that I borrowed from my buddy YD Knives. I'll link to his Instagram down below, so that if you aren't already following him, you can. Super nice guy, really appreciate it that he sent me these knives. This one particularly is the one I was most excited about. It's the one that kind of got the conversation going with him about borrowing knives to begin with. This is the Benchmade Anthem, and if you watched me unbox this knife, you probably saw that I couldn't help but already start kind of geeking out about it the second I got it out of the box before I even opened the other knives. This thing is just, it's really cool, and it's been on my radar for so long. This is kind of, in my opinion, like the flagship model from Benchmade. It's a integral titanium axis lock, but it's a different axis lock than any of their other knives to my knowledge. I don't think they're using this axis lock mechanism in anything else. It's got 20 CV blade steel. It's all finished super well. It's one of their more expensive offerings, unless you're looking at like gold class knives or something like that. And so it's been really compelling to me for a lot of reasons for a long time. And somehow I had never even held one. And finally, I don't think I'd held one. Maybe I had. I don't think I had. Finally, I have one to check out. So I've had this for a couple of days. As I mentioned in my unboxing, this isn't going to be like a true full review because I haven't done any cutting with this knife. I haven't done any real testing with it. It's just been fidgeted with by me. Over the few days that I've had it, I have slipped it into a pocket 2 separate times, once in shorts, once in jeans, just to make sure that it went in and out of pocket fine, that it seemed to have good retention, and it did. I'm confident this knife would be good in pocket, and I'll say as well, the thinness of it, it's thinner than I was expecting it to be, and so even just kind of feeling it in pocket for a second, it felt really, really good. I imagine this knife carries super well, and I've seen a lot of people actually put aftermarket clips on here as well, which I imagine would make it even better at carry. There's some deep carry clip options. It's the standard Benchmade hole pattern, even though it's this really cool like 3D milled titanium clip. So the fact that you can easily swap clips on here, that's great in my book. Playing with this thing for just a second, like right when I got it out of the box, immediately it's like addicting to fidget with. The whole thing feels super mechanical, and it's like, it's not gritty, but it has this like metallic sensation to it. And I think, yeah, it feels so different from just about anything that I've ever played with. I guess the closest in terms of action that this feels like would be like my ProTech Mordax, which is a button lock and just like super drop shutty. This feels a lot like that in the sense that this blade just free swings, but it's locking up really solid. I don't feel any real play forward, backward, side to side, so that it has that smooth of an action without being loose at the pivot is really nice. Most of my other Benchmades, to have them swing like that, they either have to be crazy well broken in, or I have to have the pivot a little bit loose to the point where there's some blade play. So this one's just, it feels so much nicer than a typical Benchmade. The way that this axis lock functions as well is really, really cool to me. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that inside the knife. I hope you can. But instead of 2 little Omega springs wrapped around the axis lock here, that I haven't had issues with breaking, but some people say they're prone to breaking eventually. This one has 1 coil spring that's screwed in. So part of the integral, they've drilled 2 holes here. So instead of divots, you've got 2 little screws connecting to like a plate or a block in there that has a coil spring coming off of it and pushing directly this way against this axis lock. That is so cool to me. It's different from any other Benchmade and seems way more sturdy to me. It feels a little bit different using it. I also, I feel like I don't have to get as much, like I don't even have to use 2 fingers on this lock. I can just use only my thumb and it works really well. It's a way better design for the axis lock. Obviously, the construction of this knife is kind of what makes that possible, being an integral with the spot to put that there. But I wish Benchmade would use this style axis lock on more, because I think it's a better design. Now, the next thing I'll say, the machining on this titanium is really nice. This kind of chevron pattern that they've done across the whole thing, and they've even gone so far as to put on the clip as well. Not only does it look really cool, I really like the aesthetic kind of vibe of that, if you will, to be a bit of a millennial for a second. I really do like it aesthetically, but in hand, it feels super nice. I like titanium as a handle material, and I don't always need it to be textured. I think sometimes just the finishing on it can be enough texture, and if the ergos are right, you can be locked in even if it's not like gritty or grippy. And this one, the ergos, I'll get to that, feel fantastic. I don't think this knife needs the texture per se to be locked in, but the texture feels excellent in hand. It's like smooth, but it's very apparent that it's there, and I can feel it everywhere that my skin in my hand comes into contact with this knife, and it feels great. I really, really like that. I think it's done exceptionally well. Let's see what else. Yeah, let's talk about ergos for a second. This handle profile is pretty neutral. This isn't like a weirdly shaped handle. I assume that, just like for my hands, this knife will fit really well in just about anybody's hands. I like that there's just a little bit of a swell here right in the center, and that it kind of dips in right before the guard. I like when my foremost finger feels kind of locked into a knife. It just gives me a better sense of security that this knife isn't going to come out of my hand. If I'm thrusting into something, that's what she said, I don't want my hand to be able to slide forward, so I like that there's a little bit of a guard there. That's important to me, but I also like that that swell is keeping this knife from being yanked out of my hand easily. It really feels like it's well placed, and you've got just a little bit of a bulge here on the back as well, and it's not jimped, but there's texture. I guess you could kind of call that jimping. I wouldn't, but these mill kind of grooves here, and the divots, the dots, the bumps, whatever you want to call those, you can just kind of barely feel them, but it feels nice. Everything about this knife is like soft. There's no sharp corners, but it all feels really, I don't know, traction's probably not even the right word. It feels like tactile, like the whole thing is kind of an experience in my hand. I don't know, I probably sound like I'm being way too nice to this knife, but I'm really excited. I love it when I get a knife that I've wanted for a very long time, and I've kind of lusted after on Instagram or wherever it is that I've seen it. I've watched a bunch of YouTube videos on it, and it's not that uncommon for me to get a knife, especially that I've built up so high in my mind of thinking that I would love it, and then just to be disappointed by it. And this has not disappointed me at all. It feels so nice. In fact, I will not be surprised if I end up buying or trading for one of these, because I would not mind at all having this knife and using this knife. And I think, frankly, this knife is probably really capable. From what I'm feeling, I kind of felt like this was a little bit of just like a flex of capability from Benchmade before. Like it was showing what they were capable of, but it wasn't necessarily a knife that would be great to like carry and use. But this blade, the shape is fantastic for use. I really like that they've kind of tapered down into this, I guess you'd call it a drop point, and then you've got a nice flat here, and then a little bit of curve, a little bit of belly there. As like an EDC, like user blade, this shape is fantastic. It's really good. It's not thick behind the edge. It's not overly thin either. It could certainly be thinner, I think, for the nature of this knife. I wouldn't mind if it was a little thinner, but it doesn't feel overly thick. I'm sure this knife will slice really well. They also haven't used overly thick blade stock. That is a very reasonable blade stock on here. I like thick blade stock on certain knives. I think it can be cool, especially on like big overbuilt stuff. I mean, I have a Spyderco Tough right now that I love. That thing is stupid thick. But on a knife like this, with this kind of design philosophy and philosophy of use, this thickness of blade stock feels just right to me. Yeah, I think that this knife could be an excellent user knife. And I know there are plenty of people who do carry and use these, but for a lot of people, myself included, who are looking at this knife and see how expensive it is and how like fancy it is, it's probably, at least for me, for a long time, I thought it would be kind of a hard knife to buy and like really use. This is like in Sebenza price territory from what I understand. I probably should have looked up the actual price. I see these on secondary so much that sometimes it's hard for me to remember what knives cost brand new, but assuming that this is the same cost as a Sebenza, if you've watched my Sebenza carry challenge videos, then you'll know I don't plan on owning one. I don't frankly really like them, and there's plenty of reasons for that, but I would 100% rather have and carry and use this knife compared to a Sebenza. This feels so much better in my hand. It feels almost nicer, kind of more unique. I guess partially because it's an integral. I think there's some cool factor behind integrals. I really dig them. It's got this interesting lock mechanism that not only is super secure, but is fun to play with. It makes cool sounds. It looks cool. It's got this awesome millwork on it. This is coming from a giant knife company. Benchmade is one of the big boys in American-made knives. They are not a small boutique company or anything like that. But this kind of feels like more of like a small boutique knife offering, if that makes sense. Like if this didn't have the butterfly on it and had some other brand, one of the smaller manufacturers here in the US, I would believe it. I guess it has an axis lock, so it kind of gives away that it's a Benchmade, but it doesn't really feel like many other Benchmades to me. It has some of their like lines and kind of like, I guess their, I don't know, I guess their feel in it a little bit, but it also feels so drastically different from any other Benchmade I've ever handled or used or carried or anything like that. So I really think this knife is just super cool. I like it quite a bit. Yeah, don't be surprised if you see me get one of these to own and use. And if I do end up getting one, I'll do another review after I've carried and used it a fair bit. Like I said, this one's not getting used by me. It's just getting fidgeted with, fondled, looked over, and that's gonna have to be that because this knife is being borrowed. But if I do get one, then I'll update it once I've used it a fair bit. But yeah, I suppose that will be enough for me to say about this for a review based on the experience that I've had with it. So keep all that in mind. But if you can't tell, I really, really, really like the Anthem. I think it's a really cool offering, and yeah, I'm kind of kicking myself for not having gotten one already. But that'll be that.